Hello, my name is Dr. Charles Durr, and I've been practicing chiropractic here in Downingtown for the last 12 years with my partner, Dr. Joseph Childs. And for the purposes of this tape, it's important to understand that I am certified in functional blood chemistry analysis, which is a nutritional approach to disease and pre-disease conditions. And I'm here to talk to you today about our program for irritable bowel syndrome. Now, irritable bowel syndrome is a faulty communication between the brain and the intestinal tract. It's classically cramping, spasm, bloating, diarrhea, and constipation. And an ever-revolving problem for people who have this problem. It's a lifestyle devastation in that you never know where you're going to be and stranded without a bathroom or something along those lines. So it really cramps your lifestyle, being free and to exercise and do the things that you like on a daily basis. And what I'm here to tell you about is what makes us different from every other doctor you've seen for this condition and the medical approaches that you may be receiving for this condition. We treat IBS metabolically and neurologically. And so let's get into the details of that. And we leave no one stone unturned when we're trying to get to the root cause of the problem. So the first thing we need to do is understand that the brain requires two things to function properly: fuel in the form of oxygen and glucose, and activation in the form of stimulation and brain rehabilitation. And frequently IBS is a problem with the stimulation to the nervous system, through the nervous system to the intestinal tract, which is either too fast or too slow, causing either constipation or bloating, diarrhea or cramping or something along those lines. Right? Now, metabolically, we're much different than your traditional approach. Metabolically means we do a complete blood count, a CBC with differential, lipid panel, thyroid panel, as just our base blood work. And most people get blood work every 3 to 6 months at their family checkup. And they receive these tests, but only in a scanty few tests. A Chem 7 versus a Chem 20, which we order. A thyroid TSH, or maybe a T4, where we do 7 thyroid tests and a few antibody tests. And so our base metabolic care starts with a very, very thorough set of blood work. And what we do is analyze the patterns within the blood work to see where there's metabolic breakdowns. All right? When you have traditional blood work, you have one range, the pathological range. So you have your numbers, and then you have the pathological numbers. By the time you get into the pathological range, you're most likely in a full-blown disease process. It's the equivalent of waiting till your oil light comes on and finding that you're 2 quarts low before you want to go ahead and put in some oil. Well, what if you're just a half quart low? Of course you want to put in some oil so your engine runs at the healthy capacity. And so that's what's the difference between functional blood chemistry and just pathological ranges. So let's get into that specifics. Now, the abnormal ranges could be high or low, and these functional ranges are pre-disease process. They're metabolic breakdowns, and one value in and of itself is not that valuable. But when we look at the patterns of breakdown, we can identify things that are not working properly, so that nutritionally and metabolically and neurologically we can rehabilitate those metabolic breakdowns without having to use drugs and so forth. And we can overcome these breakdowns by lifestyle management and nutrition and so forth. All right? So, for example, glucose. In the functional range, we consider 85 to 100 versus 65 to 100 in the pathological range. Now, I can tell you right now, if your blood chemistry and your glucose level is at 65, you're going to be shaky to irritable, you're going to be a miserable person before you eat, you're going to feel better after you eat. Okay, you're going to have frequent mood changes, and you're going to be a bear to live with in the morning, trust me. So these are just a few examples of what's called functional blood chemistry ranges, which are tighter. They're narrower values, and they're based on the average of healthy people. So some clinical chemists and some functional medicine doctors studied people who are healthy, not taking medications, and they looked at their blood and they averaged it out over a long course of time in a large-scale study. So functional values are based on healthy people, whereas the laboratory values are based on everybody. And if you've ever been to a blood draw center, you can see that most of the people sitting in that waiting room are very unhealthy. So our pathological ranges every decade get wider and wider as we get more and more unhealthy in this country. So if you're basing your health just on laboratory ranges, you're just waiting to be declared a disease in a disease process so that your doctor can justify giving you medication to intervene in that behalf. But in the functional ranges where we discover breakdowns before they become full-blown diseases that can't be reversed. Okay, so that's a big, big difference. Another thing that we look at is an adrenal stress index. The adrenal stress index is a salivary test that's done basically every 2 hours throughout a 12 to 24 hour period. And what we're looking at is your cortisol levels at certain times of the day. For example, at 3 in the afternoon, you should be at your highest cortisol level, and 3 in the evening or at night, you should be at your lowest level. And there are 7 patterns of adrenal maladaptation. So what we need to do, A, is identify if your adrenal glands are breaking down or malfunctioning, or are they exhausted, or are they hyperactive, or are they just not reacting properly. And the reason this is important is the adrenal glands are involved in the stress response. Okay, too much cortisol excreted by the adrenal glands leads to brain dysfunction, thyroid dysfunction, gut dysfunction, liver dysfunction. Also, the adrenal glands are involved with blood sugar management. So they sound the alarm when the sugar is too high, and they tell the pancreas to do its job faster. If it's too low, they talk to the liver and say, hey, bring some out of storage, bring the sugars back up. So if you have what's called dysglycemia, which is rapid alterations of your blood sugar, this can devastate your digestion and cause a lot of neurological problems and digestive problems within the gut itself. So identifying the problem with the adrenal glands is critical for improving the IBS overall. Another thing is sensitivity testing. What we call the big 5 are gluten, milk, eggs, soy, and yeast. These are the most likely foods to become a problem for your digestion. In other words, you're allergic to them, or you have an autoimmune response to these, or you're sensitive to these. Now, we do a stool analysis, which is IgG, which is much more sensitive than the traditional blood work that's IgA, and it's only based in the blood. Right? So if you want to find real food sensitivities, food allergies, you have to do the stool, and it has to be IgG. Right? So we look at, again, gluten, casein, egg, soy, and yeast. Now, if you are sensitive to these foods, once they hit your stomach, they're going to cause an immune response. Basically, your body is attacking it as if it's a virus or a bacteria. That immune response causes a massive inflammation. That inflammation, the immune response itself, is damaging the cells within your intestinal tract, causing irritability, as you may well experience on a daily basis. Right? So identifying food sensitivities is critical to stopping the cascade of irritable bowel syndrome. Right, so that's a stool test that we do to identify food antigens. Antigens come in many forms. They come in foods, which your body thinks are viruses or bugs, and then viruses, bugs, parasites, and things like that. So that's why we do a stool microbiome, which I'll elaborate on in a moment. But a sign that you may have a food sensitivity are chronic pain or fatigue, not just digestive problems, frequent indigestion, frequent fullness after meals, bloating after meals, frequent loose bowels, constipation, and vomiting. Sounds like irritable bowel syndrome, doesn't it? All right. So identifying food sensitivities is the first step on the road to eliminating the foods that would be exacerbating the problem. Right? We also do a DNA stool ecology profile. So we're looking for good bacteria ratio versus bad bacteria ratio. Those two are very critical for the overall function of your gut. And the average person with a healthy gut has anywhere from 2 to 10 pounds of good bacteria living in your gut. People with irritable bowel syndrome frequently have not enough good bacteria and way too much pathogenic or bad bacteria. They might have too much yeast, fungus, and most likely some parasites. So this test will identify if you have an antigen problem in the gut, and they have to be removed immediately, either through medications or nutritional ways or botanical remedies in some sort. But if you have a food-borne allergy and you have pathogens in your gut, it's a double whammy that's definitely going to cause irritable bowel syndrome. So we need to identify and remove any pathogens as well. And we have to check for intestinal permeability, or what's called leaky gut syndrome. All right. Now, if you've been on antibiotics, if you've been on antacids, or you've been on anti-inflammatories, your gut has been eroded to the point where most likely it's permeable, too permeable. In other words, it's not keeping food in, and undigested proteins are escaping into the bloodstream and triggering a further autoimmune response. So not only are you having inflammation in the gut, you're having inflammation within the body. Okay? So if you have leaky gut syndrome, we have to put you on a protocol to correct that as well. Right? So basically our program is identify antigens, do a thorough blood chemistry analysis to identify metabolic breakdowns, recommend nutritional changes, supplementation, lifestyle, and so forth, to get this problem under control, to rehabilitate neurologically, metabolically to the point where your digestive tract is working where it should be. Because if a person has irritable bowel syndrome, The digestion is the key to health. Not only will they have a problem in their gut, they're going to have a problem in their immune system, they're probably going to have an autoimmune disease, and they're probably going to have other problems that are coming from the root cause, which is the gut itself. So if you or a loved one has irritable bowel syndrome and you're interested in learning more about our program, or you want to get examined and evaluated to see if you're a good candidate for this program, please call our office and make an appointment. However, if you're not ready to make a lifestyle change, which may involve changing your diet, changing your lifestyle, and doing some things in the way you go about your daily living, then this program most likely is not for you. But if you're willing to make a lifestyle change, you're ready to make changes free of medications and the dread of where the next bathroom visit's going to be, please give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you, give you an evaluation, and see if we can help you. Until then, I wish you luck. Bye-bye.